Facts.
Well, hello and welcome to the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Glad you're able to spend some time with us. Hope you're having a good day as we roll into yet another weekend here in Nova Scotia. We got a little bit of rain yesterday. That, of course, was a good thing and not enough, but it's a start anyway. It looks like we're going to see those threatening skies again today. Could see a passing shower. But any little bit will help. I saw a story on CTV News last night where they talked to Kim Masland, who's the minister responsible, and the province has spent money on 700,000 bottles of water thus far this year in Nova Scotia. That's a lot of bottled water, not to mention all of you out there listening to us today that are paying to fill up your wells. Some of the people in the story last night were 3, 4, 5 times that they've had their wells filled, and that is not a inexpensive behavior. And of course, we continue to hope for rain here in Nova Scotia. It was funny. I was at the grocery store yesterday, and I was walking out, and there was a lady in front of me who, with the doors open, she said, "I haven't seen that for a long time." And I'm looking around. What's she talking about? And it turns out it was the rain. Well, not as fabulous a Friday as usual, at least for me today, and for all of you out there in the KISS Army and Rock Soldiers, of course. We're mourning the loss yesterday of original OG guitar player and founding member of the 70s rock band. Well, started in the 70s, but they went on for a long time after that. Of course, who I'm speaking of is Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley passing away yesterday at the age of 74. He's on my Mount Rushmore. He really is. He's up there with Stevie Ray Vaughan and, of course, Eddie Van Halen and Ace Frehley. My Mount Rushmore might be a little bit more than 4 faces, but he certainly has a prominent position there. Influence on countless numbers of musicians in the hard rock genre from the moment that they broke into the scene in the early 70s right up until the split in 82, and then back again for that reunion tour. And, of course, many of us traveled to see that. And I saw Ace Frehley in 1979. Yep, I'm dating myself a little bit here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the open hour today, but I just wanted to start the show by sending our thoughts out, of course, to all of you who are mourning the loss of the spaceman. Ace Frehley yesterday dying at the age of 74. It was a good news day for many of you that watched the Toronto Blue Jays. They're back in the series. There's a lot of people that were pretty cocky, I will say, at the beginning of this Seattle homestand when the Mariners were up 2-0, had quite frankly embarrassed the Blue Jays at home for the first 2 games of that series. And got a lot of emails from people that maybe were Mariners or maybe are Mariners fans. Cocky about the chances of the Seattle Mariners perhaps sweeping the Blue Jays and advancing to the World Series. But that is not to be, is it? Another big night last night. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. setting the league or the team record for home runs in the postseason now. Got another dinger last night. Max Scherzer, wow, where did that come from, right? He was he didn't pitch in 22 games. And to be honest, wasn't the Max Scherzer of old through much of the regular season when he wasn't injured. But last night, I thought he was going to take John Snyder's head off when he was coming out to take him off the mound. He wanted to stay out there. Anyway, great to see. Of course, the series continues tonight. A little bit earlier start this time. Those 9:30 starts are terrible, right? Or at least for us here. But this one is starting, I do believe that's first pitch at 7 o'clock tonight. And, of course, you will hear that game live right here over the air on your radio at 95.7. And the Moose play tonight. They're playing host to, this is a historic night for the Mooseheads, at least for the this part of the early in the season. It's the first time that the Newfoundland Regiment will be coming across the pond to play here, and we're looking forward to hosting the newest team in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and that will happen tonight and tomorrow, and that pregame will start at 6:30. So we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing all week, right? We're going to put the Blue Jays game on when it starts over the air on your radio, and we'll keep the Mooseheads on to your stream so you can pick that up on your smart speaker or however it is you stream audio these days, so you can get the best of both worlds. You can listen to the Jays, you can listen to the Mooseheads and Gareth McDonald's call, and I know I'll be doing that tonight. Maple Leafs last night won too. It was a sporting win for me. Maybe it's one of those yin and yangs. I was hit pretty hard by the Ace Frehley news last night, but then I started to listen to some tunes and had the hockey game on in the background and watched the Leafs come and win in overtime. Austin Matthews with the game-winning goal. So the Leafs appear to be maybe steadying the ship. I know it's early. I know and people were starting to panic after Game 3. It's a long season, but the Maple Leafs winning last night and setting the world straight, I shall say. Well, there's some significant news in the province over the last 24 hours. Our discussion yesterday about the changes that the government kind of slid in under the radar, I'll say, to the code of conduct in Nova Scotia. Well, that made it into cabinet yesterday and into the cabinet scrums after that, and a lot of questions asked of the minister responsible. That's John Lohr, who says that it's not anti-democratic. He said that there was no rules on the books to begin with. Then they put rules on the books, and now are taking a closer look at those rules because of maybe an overload of complaints, and it could be 2027 before we have these back. I was kind of taken aback by the comment that, well, it was being used a lot. Well, and to be fair, I'm sure that there's abuse in all systems. But maybe Nova Scotians just aren't happy with their municipal governments. And maybe they're frustrated because they're not being listened to. Something you may want to discuss in the open hour today. Top story here on 95.7 this morning was, of course, the $25,000 fine that was handed out to the person responsible for starting the Barrington Lake wildfire a couple of years ago. This come to fruition this week, I think yesterday. A $25,000 fine. I think I heard or read that the cost of that fire was over $8 million. That just seemed like it was low to me. I think that might have been the actual cost to put the fire out, but there's loss of all those hectares of woodland and not to mention people being evacuated and so on and so forth. I'm curious as to what you think, if a $25,000 fine is enough of a deterrent from this happening again. Apparently it was a gathering of friends, and a tire got lit on fire, and they tried to stamp it out but didn't, and then that started the blaze. So I'm curious, and I will open up the phone lines after 11 o'clock today to get your thoughts on it as well. We were talking about Brendan Maguire yesterday and universities. Our conversation with Peter Halpin showing a significant drop in enrollments this year, particularly in our universities, particularly in the international student realm. And as Peter described, international students are lucrative to universities in Nova Scotia because they come from away and they are charged a premium for their tuitions. They have up to some places up to 3 times more than a regular quote-unquote Nova Scotia student would be paying in tuition. The ministry yesterday got kind of pushed on those questions. I know we were talking about reaching out, and we're still going to try and do that to Minister Maguire on this. But he said no new money coming for the universities. So now I would suspect, and after our conversation yesterday with Peter Halpin from the association, it looks like universities are going to have to do some number crunching in order to see if they can still provide all their services to their students that they would normally because of this. And, of course, that number of international students has been capped by the federal government. So I think there's a jurisdictional issue that's happening here. Anyway, something you might want to talk about in the open hour. Also, Lena Metledge-Diab was in town yesterday. She, of course, is the federal immigration minister and made a couple of an announcement and then answered a couple of questions after that. The announcement was the deal with Mark Carney yesterday, of course, who was making an announcement about the Liberal Party's new move forward on crime plan. I think it's a 3-pillar or 3-tiered plan. More cops, tougher bail, tougher sentencing, and some prevention methods to keep people out of jail or in dangerous situations. And one of the provisions that was talked about here with the minister was provisions for mental health supports for situations where somebody's in crisis. I know that's something that many of you have asked for here on the program. But then the minister was pushed on immigration. And hey, let's face it, immigration has been a topic of discussion here on this program for many years, including this week. And what I found interesting from the minister yesterday was that Nova Scotia is going to see an increase in the number of immigrants that are permitted to come into the province by the federal government. They cap the number at these days, that number in flux. The minister asked yesterday, she said that the province itself, the government, the provincial government, asking for more immigrants to come into the country. Now, I know this has been a contentious issue, and I know it's something you're going to want to talk about, and we're going to do that after 11 o'clock today. But the argument that I've heard here loud and clear is that we should probably back off on immigration until we get the housing situation sorted. We're finally starting to see vacancy rates change. We're finally starting to see rental companies offering incentives because they're having trouble renting their spaces. Now, the province is asking the feds to increase the number of immigrants that can come to the program under the programs. I'm very curious as to what you'll have to say about that, and we'll open up those phone lines when we come back. We're going to stop. We're going to take our first break here on the Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. On the other side of it, the Prime Minister yesterday announcing a bunch of planned changes to the legal system in Canada, including bail, including sentencing, including adding more police. To me, sounded an awful lot like a lot of the things that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre have been talking about for some time. Just happens that the Shadow Minister for Justice and Attorney General of Canada is Larry Brock. He's in Nova Scotia today and tomorrow for a town hall on crime. And he's going to join us when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Rest in peace, Ace. We'll see you in a minute.
Facts.
All right, welcome back. This is the Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Glad you're able to spend some time with us. If you caught the news yesterday, maybe you saw some of the coverage of Prime Minister Carney making an announcement on crime yesterday, and that was also there was a second-ish announcement with the immigration minister, of course, and Halifax West MP Lena Metlage-Diab here talking about the 3 pillars that the Prime Minister had unveiled earlier at an announcement around here. And as I said in my preamble, or just before the break, it sounded quite similar to some of the things that we've been hearing from the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, that's Pierre Poilievre. And I don't know if this was by plan, maybe he can tell us, or if this was just by chance, but the Shadow Minister for Justice and the Attorney General of Canada is Larry Brock. He's also a member of Parliament for Brant South Six Nations in Ontario, and he's here this weekend to do some town halls on crime, and he's managed to carve out a few minutes to join us here on the program. Larry, how are you?
Well, good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're able to join us today. Is this was this a fluke, or did you have some kind of inkling that this was going on, that you were going to be in the immigration minister's riding a day after she made those announcements?
No, that's pure coincidental. I had this planned for a couple of weeks. I knew that the Liberal government, the Carney Liberal government, was planning on introducing a crime bill. We've been hearing about this literally since the day that they were elected. But here we are, almost 6 months removed. It was supposed to happen at some point next week. We don't know which day yet. And Prime Minister Carney gave us a little glimpse as to what this crime legislation may look like. So I'll be interested to read the fine details. But if I take a look at just the announcements that he made yesterday, my initial take is a lot of fluff, lacking substance.
It's interesting because he, as I mentioned in the preamble, Larry, some of the things he highlighted yesterday in his press conference were some of the things that your leader's been talking about for a long time: bail and
Yes.
changing the sentencing laws.
Yes, we've been talking about it for years, actually, Dan. And but one thing that was noticeably absent yesterday, and I want your viewers to really understand this distinction. Nowhere in that announcement did he proclaim that he was going to repeal the disastrous principle of restraint, which requires judges and justices of the peace to release the accused at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive conditions. This was brought in by the Justin Trudeau Liberal government in 2019, and that forever changed the landscape in terms of allowing violent repeat criminals to roam our streets, creating all the chaos that we see in communities right across this country. So it's one thing to indicate that they're adding more reverse onus provisions to existing serious charges. Well, the criminal code already has a number of serious charges that have reverse onus provisions, namely murder has a reverse onus provision. What that means is when someone makes application in bail court, they have the onus to establish why they should be released versus the Crown with the onus of establishing why that person should be detained. But at the end of the day, the assessment at the bail court stage is a risk assessment. So it doesn't matter whatsoever as to whose onus it is, whether it's the Crown, whether it's the defense. When you have the principle of restraint, which Justin Trudeau introduced in 2019, mandating that these individuals need to be released, we're going to have more of the status quo once this bill ever gets passed in the House of Commons.
Larry, when we talk about crime here on the program, and we talk about some of the approaches by the governing Liberals or by the Conservatives, I take calls from people who are concerned that we're gonna fill up our jails and there'll be no space for anybody. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't buy that. A lot of the people that are currently in detention centers aren't necessarily there because they've been detained by a judge in bail court. They're there for a myriad of reasons. They're perhaps there to work on a plan for release. They're there to speak with their lawyer, or they're changing lawyers, or they're simply trying to rack up some dead time so that when they ultimately are found guilty, they can make an argument to a judge to say, hey, look at the conditions that I found myself in. I need to get a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 credit off of my sentence. So one thing that is never talked about by this Carney federal government is the actual percentage of people in our detention centers who are actually there because of a detention order. But nevertheless, it certainly should be a signal to all the premiers of provinces and territories that they have a responsibility too. This is not just a federal problem. This is also a provincial and municipal problem. So all three levels of government have to adapt to this new reality. If we're going to get tough on crime, and certainly that is the platform that the Conservative Party has, we need to get tough on crime. We need to restore balance and safety in our community. We can't be coddling these criminals like this Carney Liberal government has done repeatedly over the last 10 years. Then the provinces have to step up and do their job to make sure that we've got the capacity to deal with additional members.
But would that, Larry, sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
yes.
would that not be essentially downloading the problem onto the provinces? Because if you want to get tough on crime, and I think Canadians are behind you on that, but if we download the responsibility of capacity onto the provinces, isn't that just kind of kicking the can down the road?
I don't see it that way. I see it as a partnership between the federal and the provincial governments and municipalities to all work in tandem to improve community safety. Everyone, when I go on my crime town halls right across this country, Dan, I repeatedly state this is not a partisan issue. I don't care what your political ideology is. Everyone strives to live in a peaceful community where they can raise their family without worrying about being broken into the middle of the night by gunfire or some other weapon, knowing that when they park their car in the driveway, when they wake up, that car is still going to be there, allowing the children to play in the neighborhood, the backyard, the front yard, the driveway. That's what communities want. That's what Canadians want. The number one responsibility for a federal government is to keep Canadians safe. The Carney Liberal government has been derelict in that responsibility since their election.
Larry, staying with the jail issue, we have a problem here in Nova Scotia, and I don't know if it's the same. I'm sure it is across the rest of the country that we lack in officers, corrections officers, and it creates a dangerous situation at work. Do the Conservatives and does Pierre Poilievre have a plan to address that?
Well, that is a provincial domain, and as I said, if we're going to be tough on crime jointly, if the provinces want to work with the federal government, we all have to look at solutions. That means capacity issues. That's improving the conditions in our detention centers. That's hiring more correctional officers. We all have to do our part to ensure that community safety is the number one priority. And if it takes a concerted effort, we know that Sean Fraser yesterday met with his provincial and territorial counterparts. I would hope that Gary Antasangari, our public safety minister, is doing the very same thing, so that they're all working towards a plan to ensure that we're all, doing our parts to improve community safety in this country.
Larry, pair of town halls, you have two of them, correct?
I do, that's correct.
Where are they?
Halifax, and then the riding of South Shore St. Margaret's. I believe the town is Little Italy.
Okay.
Never been there yet, but that's where I'll be Saturday morning.
Well, we appreciate you spending some time in Nova Scotia, and appreciate you spending some time here on the program with us. Have a good weekend.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. Have a great day.
That is Larry Brock. He is the Conservative Shadow Minister for Justice and the Attorney General of Canada, also an MP for the riding in Ontario of Brantford, Brant South, and Six Nations. We have to stop. We have to take our next break. When we come back, we gave him the week off last week, but he's back today. That, of course, is our good friend Tim Powers from Summa Strategies and Abacus Data. We'll get into this bill that the Prime Minister gave us a preview of yesterday, and a bunch of other things. Border security announcements today happening in Ottawa as the Prime Minister continues on his crime agenda, can I call it, this week? You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. Welcome back. The fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show continues. Glad you're able to spend some time with us. There's been no lack of news emanating from Ottawa and those surrounding circles this week, with Mark Carney making a trip to Egypt to take part in a hastily put together signing ceremony for the ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. Couldn't get the company car, so he had to borrow one, which I'm sure our next guest might have something to say about. And, of course, yesterday, the Prime Minister talking about his crime plan for crime, I'll call it. A lot of the things in there sounded familiar, sounded like some of the things that Pierre Poilievre's been talking about for some time, to get us a perspective on what's going on in Ottawa. As we do here weekly, here is Tim Powers from Summa Strategies and Abacus Data. How are you, brother?
Well, I'm good, buddy. I'm good. I just scored 2 tickets for the Sunday game, Jays Mariners.
Look at you.
So, I'd take Todd if he were there, or you if you were closer. But I'm going to take my son, because 30-odd years ago, when the Jays played the White Sox in 1993, my dad arranged for me to go to that ALCS game. So I'm pumped to go back 32 years later with my own son. So there you go.
Full circle.
Yeah, and the way they're playing, maybe, on Sunday night, Dan, somebody will be playing to go to the World Series, and somebody will be playing not to be eliminated. So
Right.
It'll be pretty cool.
And it'll be, Rogers Center's been insane through the whole playoffs. I'm sure it'll be stepped up that much more with all that pressure on the line.
Oh yeah, I mean you're certainly seeing that. I mean it does. I mean you and I are of a certain vintage, good wine vintage, but not aged wine vintage.
No.
That it reminds me a lot. I know the Jays did well 2015, 2016, but they didn't have this, right? It reminds me a lot of 30-odd years ago and the energy that Canada had around this team. So, and your corporation is doing a great job of storytelling, which is awesome. So go Jays, go!
It's interesting. I've read some stuff out of Seattle, and they're kind of upset about how the whole country's cheering for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, because there are a lot of I have a British Columbian who works in our office, and he's a Mariners fan, but he dare not say anything because the rest of the office is all pro Blue Jays. So I get it. I think Seattle has always had a big pull from British Columbia, maybe a little bit from Alberta, but all those fans are now wearing blue, not green.
Maybe the Blue Jays will unite the country, Tim. Maybe it will be the spark that
Dan,
brings us together.
I thought it would be you and I.
Well,
I thought it would be you and I.
We've been trying for a long time, but we just haven't got any traction. I can't hit a home run, so.
With your tongue, you can't, buddy.
Well, maybe. Anyway, let's get to the business here. Mark Carney earlier in the week headed off to Egypt to go and take part in that the signing of the ceasefire deal. The company jet was in Japan or something, so he couldn't use it, so he chartered a private jet to go. Some blowback on that, and then suddenly we hear, but there was some productive meetings held.
Well, I mean, geez, the issue with Canadian government jets has been long-standing. As you know, that goes well back even past the Blue Jays because they were the 92, 93 weight because they've always been either broken or the fleet's not right and nobody wants to commission new ones. I think Mr. Chrétien did. Or Mr. Mulrooney did, and then Mr. Chrétien kept it. There really haven't been much done on new Canadian jets. So, yeah, I mean, that's easy low-hanging fruit to go after. But it's fun, right? And it speaks to maybe how sometimes the symbols of this country, like jets and 24 Sussex, go into disrepute, and we have to rent and borrow things, and then people wonder, is that done properly? Are we spending too much? So, yeah, those are good distractions. I don't know how substantive they are.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister giving us a sneak peek at his plans for crime moving forward. More cops, changes to sentencing, changing to bail, some prevention measures in there. Sounds a lot like the platform that Pierre Poilievre ran on.
Indeed, and again, this takes us back to the Chrétien era, right? When Preston Manning and the Reform were putting forward some more fiscally conservative policies then, the Martin Chrétien team took them. There's a reason, Ken, the Liberals win often. If they see somebody else's ideas and they think they fit, they'll take them. And, Poilievre, I'm sure, will try and claim credit for it and say it's not enough, but in one respect, maybe he's happy he's having some influence on government. In another, as Carney takes these things away from him, maybe there's some political limitation management that's happening, because where Poilievre has been really good and connects with Canadians is on affordability and crime and justice. And he's shown now, I think most of the major polls have the two parties tied, that by going on those issues, he gets himself back in the game. So much like the carbon tax that Carney reversed, this is probably the Liberals' attempt to slow or hold Pierre Poilievre from getting too much political traction.
Am I naive, or is this how it's supposed to work? How government's supposed to work?
It should work this way, right? Like, right? I mean, yes, without all the politics, if somebody you shouldn't not take an idea because that person is from a different political party, right? And political scientists who you and I talk to all the time will tell you that's what good opposition is about. It isn't just critiquing. It's saying, all right, here's why you're doing it wrong, and here's a better idea. So, yeah, all the political theater, good governments, good parliaments work when everybody who has good ideas can have them borrowed, stolen, or used for the benefit of all Canadians.
Prime Minister is expected to make a border security announcement today. Do you think that this was something that got promised during his last trip to D.C.?
Yeah, likely. I mean, what was really interesting yesterday at that news conference around the crime and justice announcements that we just talked about was, Carney answering questions about should we kick it up? Should we have retaliatory tariffs, countervailing tariffs as we had before? Because as we know, Doug Ford has been pushing those, as have other premiers. And he said, no, don't think so. And the word that stuck out for me, Dan, he said, we're in an intense period of negotiation right now. So I think we need to look at everything that's happening, including today's announcement, as part of that intense period. Now, whether that intense period results in outcomes, we'll see. But clearly the Prime Minister is of the view we're perhaps closer, based on his answer yesterday, than farther away from getting something.
Does this weigh on him at all, or does this hurt him at all when he went down there with all this pomp and circumstance about his second trip to the White House and left empty-handed?
Well, you and I and Todd and I, we don't pucker up and kiss each other all the time because the audience wouldn't really like that. And Mark Carney went down and did that with Donald Trump, and he took a lot of criticism for being too fawning and too flattering. I don't think that matters in the long run if there are deals, and those deals are viewed by the people who are impacted by them as being positive. It's like, criticism in the second period of a game about, you shouldn't have made that pass. But if they win the game in the end, nobody really cares about that pass, except maybe the coach who pulls it out later and says you shouldn't have done it.
Right. And the other comment that the Prime Minister made yesterday that raised my eyebrow when he was asked about China and the Chinese ambassador saying, like, look, if you drop the tariff on EVs, we'll drop the tariffs on canola, and I would say by extension on seafood out here in our part of the world, Tim. And then the Prime Minister said, well, that's all fair and good, but it's not that simple. And that was kind of an eyebrow raiser for me.
Yeah, because Wab Kinew, Scott Moe have been saying pull the EV tariffs, right? Because they certainly have a lot of canola out that way. Our Atlantic premiers haven't been as boisterous per se on that, even though, as you rightly point out, seafood is impacted. I mean, there's a lot at play here. I think. If I read it correctly, Dan, the Prime Minister's meeting the Chinese leader Xi Jinping in November.
APEC, right? At the APEC summit.
At the APEC summit. So who knows what's on the table? I mean, we have to be careful with the Chinese, but we've had long trading relationships with them too. And the auto is very worried, as you know. They don't want Canadian auto. Don't want the EV mandates lifted, but in the same vein, if the auto sector is actually being sacrificed, and as some argue it could be, maybe there's a play with China. But that's going to be a tough one for Carney because, that auto sector, as we all know, right in the heart of Ontario, his biggest provincial ally, Doug Ford, is not going to want to see that go anywhere. So I just think there are so many moving parts right now. It's fascinating, but extremely frustrating if you're in one of those sectors that's being whacked and you're worried about your job and your income. And you and I can talk about it and the strategy of it, but it's real for so many people.
Tim, enjoy the ball game tonight. Enjoy Game 6 at almost at Skydome at Rogers Center, and go Jays, go.
I would have known what you meant, Dan, with Skydome. All right, buddy. You have a good weekend. Bye.
That is Tim Powers, our friend from Summa Strategies and Abacus Data. Got a ticket to Game 6. And bringing his son. Good for him. That'll be a lot of fun. And I will mention it again. We'll get the game tonight here on the radio, and Game 6, and if necessary, Game 7. Time to stop, take another break here on the program. When we come back, a return visit from the Mayor of Yarmouth. Pam Mood will be our guest. We're going to talk about the ability for you and I to file complaints about municipal politicians. Mayor Mood saying it was a good move by the province to put a stop to this until they can fix the rules. We'll dig into that when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Aalders. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. The fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Aalders. Hope you're having a fantastic day as we move towards the weekend, and a busy weekend it's going to be for all of you watching the sports, the ball games that are going to happen. Of course, the Mooseheads hockey, the NHL is in, the CFL is getting down to the playoffs, and it's going to be a sports fan's plethora of entertainment, I will say, but also a lot going on for those of you who aren't sports fans. It's the most wonderful time of the year to steal a lyric from a famous Christmas carol. I think that should be sung in the fall rather than the winter, because if you've been driving around and seen the leaves on the trees, holy smokes, are we getting a display from Mother Nature. Might be fun to take a drive down the South Shore. Maybe, I don't know, go to Yarmouth and visit Pam Mood. Pam, how are you?
Well, I'd love to have some visitors.
Pam, of course, is the mayor of Yarmouth, but also wears a different hat as the president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and I'm very glad that you were able to join us today, Pam.
Always my pleasure.
Now, what we're talking about, of course, is we had a lengthy discussion on this on the program here yesterday on our open hour with some concern about the province putting the pause button on the Code of Conduct and not allowing just ordinary Nova Scotians now to make a complaint against the regional councillor. The reason why we reached out to you, Mayor Mood, was there's a quote in, I think it was a CBC article, that says that the province needs, as you said, and then this is the quote, says the province needs a standard definition for frivolous or vexatious complaints so all independent investigators handling municipal complaints are on the same page. You go on to say, it may not always be this way, but for now I think it was a brilliant move on the part of the province to say, you know what, if we're going to get this right, we need to take a pause and see where we go. I guess the first question is can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Well, I don't know how to expand on it. We have a code of conduct. We didn't have a standard code of conduct before. I'm not even sure if all municipalities had one in the first place.
Right.
So my first statement would be, let's not panic. We had nothing before. We have something, and, you know, I stand by what the team did. I chaired the Code of Conduct Working Group. Tremendous work done in getting us to where we are. With anything new, Dan, you know, you have to tweak it until you get it right. And that's exactly what's happening. This is not, I don't believe it's a forever, you know, nobody can complain. It's let's just put a halt to it right now. Take a look at where we are, what needs to be changed, and then, you know, take it on again.
Is it purely based on the piece where municipalities, including your own, are getting just inundated by people complaining about frivolous stuff?
Yeah, a number of things. So my own hasn't. We haven't, not that I'm aware of, we haven't had any codes, and I'm sure others have not as well. And so a number of things. Like, what is, you want me to be Pam or you want me to be political? Because I have no...
You can be both, Pam. We got lots of time.
Okay, because I can't do the political. This is what you want to hear.
Right? No,
this
fair
code,
enough.
Right? I mean, I can't do it. So
Sure.
That's why I get in trouble. Not code wise, but I'm going to say
works for
what
me.
I'm thinking.
I like straight shooting politicians.
I'm pretty darn straight shooting.
Then shoot, Pam. You know, shoot.
It was the purpose of the code. Was to set out the expectations for the behaviors of members elected to council and carrying out their functions,
right,
and being able to make the decisions, you know, that for the constituents in their municipality. So think you're sitting in that seat. You have to say something, but you don't dare to say it because, you know, somebody down the road doesn't like you, and it doesn't matter what you say or how you say it, they're going to take it as an attack. They're going to take it the wrong way, and there's a code violation that has to be investigated. Mm-hmm. These cost money too, although money is not the issue. It takes money. It takes time. Like, we need to, from my perspective, and I believe from the province as well, there's a purpose for this code. When it gets abused, when anything gets abused, you have to take a second look at it. And, we don't always have to like what our elected officials say. So we need to somehow, and I don't know how, figure out how do you get to the intention of the code. What was it built for, and is that exactly what we're doing? And we're missing in a couple places. So, can you right now, because you don't like me, like send a code violation, and does that, they get out sometimes, people hear about them. Does that ruin my reputation? Am I innocent until proven guilty? Has it stopped me as an elected official from doing my job? I'm going to tell you that that's the case in some places. Can't say anything. Don't dare to open a mouth as a politician, because you're afraid if you say the wrong thing, it's going to be a code violation from somebody out there that's just taking it the wrong way.
But isn't that the spirit of what the code would be used for, Pam? And the reason why I say that is that I understand that there's abuses of all systems out there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely.
But isn't that what the code is for? Is that if somebody is genuinely concerned about the behavior or whatever of a counselor, right now they have no way to voice that.
Okay. And I'm going to say this, which will upset some people.
Sure.
You just used the word genuinely. If that's the case, what we want to do is fix it so that those that genuinely believe they have an issue can come forward. But if you're just coming forward for other reasons, you don't like someone, or you don't like how something was said, or you're trying to shine a bad light on something, like, come on, this is a common sense thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head. We need this to be used like most rules and regulations are set up to, for us to be able to adhere to the intention of it, which is not a free for all for everybody to just complain because this doesn't work.
Isn't that a slippery slope, though, Pam? Because what people may be, what a counselor may consider to be a frivolous complaint might be absolutely genuine from somebody out there.
Yeah, that's true. So you have to. So how do we find that way? And we haven't found it. But right now, all I can say is it's being abused on a number of fronts, and it's not. I need to make this very clear.
Sure.
This is not to hinder anybody, Dan. That's not what elected officials are about. It's not what the province's intention is. We want this to work, and we just need to find a way to not. If I said something that upset you, and you get 20 of your friends to all put in code violations against me, for example, I'm not saying this happened, but it could. Then what happens? So now 20 of them have to be investigated because I'm playing a game of let's get that person. This is it just gets out of hand, and we just want it to be. We want it to be the right venue because we want to hear those complaints.
Pam,
and,
sorry,
yeah.
we're almost out of time. My last question to you is this: now that this has been changed and average Nova Scotian no longer has a way to do this, what's your advice to them if they see something, hear something, or are upset at what's with their counselor?
Yeah. So I would report it to the council, send a letter to the council. And I'm going to say this, council is not staff. So whatever comes in the form of a letter, send it, and it'll end up on the council agenda. If it doesn't, then, maybe councils are maybe not as open and transparent as they should be. So, that discussion needs to be happening at the council table. Keep in mind that there wasn't a standard way before to do this. We've got a standard way now. We just need to tweak it. So I don't want anybody out there to think that the code's going away or that you will forever not have a way, because it's too important.
Pam, I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
That is Pam Mood.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, you as well. That's Pam Mood, the president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and the mayor of Yarmouth. Something you might want to discuss when we open up the telephone lines. We're going to do that right after the news. The lines are now open. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The Friday free-for-all. Right after the break. We're probably going to get in trouble for that, but I can't mark the passing of the legendary and now immortal Ace Frehley without playing some of his music, right? It would just be wrong. If you can bear with me just for a second here, imagine back to 1976, that solo from Detroit Rock City off of the album Destroyer, a 6-year-old Dan Alstrand buys that for his very first album. After had a cousin that exposed me to Kiss before that. That was the very first piece of album or vinyl that I bought, and that's the very first song that I played on that album. And that guitar solo right there spawned a love affair with Ace Frehley and with Kiss that lasts until this day. Just that little piece right there. And I know many of you are feeling the same way that we are today about the loss of Ace Frehley, 76 years old, passing away yesterday. Might be something you want to talk about here as we continue the open hour. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I saw Ace Frehley and Kiss in 1979. Yeah, I'm dating myself now, right? In 1979, I saw them at the Duluth Arena in Duluth, Minnesota, of all places in the world. Judas Priest was supposed to open for them. They were unable to attend, so they went into the Rolodex, and they brought some guy up named John Cougar, who became John Cougar Mellencamp, who became John Mellencamp, to open for them. And I think I was 8 years old, and my mom and dad brought me and my aforementioned cousin to the show, and I have the ticket stubs still. I have them in an album. In fact, we smuggled a camera in, and I have some photographs that I'll have to dig out. It was $10 a ticket. Now, it's 1979 money, and it was the Dynasty Tour. It's right before all of the crazy stuff happened and the band started to break up and those kind of things. But $10 a ticket. Now, I get it. 1979 money compared to 2025 money is certainly two different things. But I mean, what are those Rush tickets worth, right? I'm hearing that they're $300, $400, $500 a piece. Just saying. Might be something you want to talk about here on the open hour. You might want to talk about something that we talked about this week, something that we didn't talk about this week. It's the beauty of the Friday free-for-all. You can discuss whatever it is that on your mind. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's start with Jim. Jim, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
It was nice to see you last Friday down at the Westin.
Yeah, it was great to meet I think it was the producer as well. I'm not sure, but there were other staff there. And the cake was excellent, by the way.
Yeah, we're still eating it. Believe it or not.
It's nice to see you. Yeah, this morning I've been trying to catch up with a few things, and I wanted to talk about the code of conduct issue.
Sure.
Yeah, that came up, that came up years ago. And it was the same, basically, the complaint about how do we complain or handle complaints against councillors from the general public. And a lot of it was like some councillors lose their cool at some meetings and they'll use the F word or this or that. Or nowadays they go on social media, or have in the past, some present and past councillors have gone on social media between each other using foul language and what have you. But I think what it comes down to is the mayor himself or herself has the ability to chair those meetings, and there's a certain code of conduct that they I don't know if it's an actually swear an oath or whatever, but they take a position where they have to make an affirmation that they will conduct themselves accordingly for integrity and what have you. And usually it's handled, it's handled within the council itself through the mayor. And in some cases, in some other cities, they have fines or warning letters or what have you. In some cases, the mayor could even eject somebody from council if they were a council. But now, complaints coming from the outside, they would be thousands of them maybe, and they're usually centered on the individual councillors. Sometimes I found the biggest complaint that the public has said over your station and many others is mostly conflict of interest, that they'll allege some councillors have a conflict of interest. So that's where I'm coming from on that. I think it's a shame that we have to have all this stuff done up now because of these councillors who put themselves out there. When you run for an election, you put yourself out there, and you would like to think that you have a lot of integrity, and you're going to make sure you do that. You're going to serve the best interest of your constituents. So it's a shame that we have to look at getting all kinds of conditions or requirements to keep somebody in line that's an elected official.
Jim, I appreciate your call.
Now, you take care.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think my thoughts on it are, and I'll try to keep them to a minimum today because this is the free-for-all, but my thought on it is so what if there's a lot? Who cares if there are 20, 30, 40, 100 allegations of breaching the code of conduct leveled against a mayor or a council or councillors? Wouldn't that be the job of the independent investigator to wade through? And if it all stems from one incident, if it all stems from somebody who is a chronic complainer, see, I worry that this is being used or going to be used to just shut us up. Or is it a money-saving thing because they're worried about how much the work the independent investigator's going to have? Maybe people aren't happy with the way their municipal councils are working. That's why you're getting so many complaints. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Len to the program. Len, how are you?
Not too bad. And yourself?
I'm good. What's on your mind today, sir?
Nice to see the Blue Jays winning again.
Yes, sir. Very happy to see that.
Yeah, it's good for the country, really,
it is.
In a way.
Yep.
I'd like to really wish that some politicians, like our Prime Minister, why couldn't he take the example of good old John F. Kennedy, who never accepted a salary during his term of office? His money, which was around $400,000, which I think the President of the United States receives, went towards charity. For example, what I'm getting to is, why does the Prime Minister take a trip and have to take a private aircraft? God knows how much that's going to cost the taxpayers' money. Why couldn't he at least send some official of his to go to Europe or wherever they go to whatever they do? Or why couldn't he go on our own airlines, Air Canada, and sit in first class? Why do they have to spend this kind of money wastefully? Why can't these people show an example to the rest of the people of the country? And that's what I would love to see, that somebody in politics would show the example how we're saving money for the taxpayers. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.
You too, Len. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think I can share a little bit of insight into Len's, the last part of Len's question. I do believe it is a security issue. The Prime Minister is of course, one of the most protected people in the country. I don't know if the RCMP unit that is attached to him would permit him to fly commercial, even if it is first class. I'm assuming that's what the reason is, and he needs to be able to fly on a moment's notice, right? I get it. I understand where Len is coming from. I'm very curious as to what this jet cost. And wasn't it just interesting? And I know some of you sent the articles to me, and I do appreciate that. But wasn't it interesting that once this story broke, that Prime Minister Carney was in Egypt for this thing, that all of a sudden, hey, look, there was some opportunities. They were locked up in a room waiting for this thing to come together, and the Prime Minister managed to have some sidebar discussions with some leaders from Saudi Arabia and from other areas around that country, and they were productive. Well, does that justify the expense? Or do we do what our friend Tim Powers was talking about? Do we spend the money? Do we fix 24 Sussex Drive? Do we fix or get a Canadian Air Force One that's at the beck and call of the Prime Minister? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break.
Facts.
All right, welcome back. This is the Friday Free-for-All. Often imitated, never duplicated. Hope you're having a fantastic day. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome first-time caller Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. What's on your mind?
Well, not really happy. Sorry to hear about Ace Frehley passing away.
Yeah,
he was
tough.
quite a guy for sure. I just wanted to relate a little story we had. We saw him back in 1976 up in Moncton with the band, of course.
Right.
And, their opening act was a band called Hammersmith from Calgary. They were just lasted a couple of years. But anyway, I wasn't sold on Kiss, and I went up and it was hook, line, and sinker after the show. It was an amazing show. I'm actually looking at some pictures from it right here, right now. But I'm from northern Nova Scotia, and me and about 11 friends of mine crammed ourselves into the back of a work truck that one of their fathers had.
Right.
And we headed to Moncton. And just before we got to the border, there's a weigh scale there.
Yep.
And he stopped and he said, "Everybody, keep your mouth shut." I forgot about the weigh scale. Anyway, we got through it, and we got up there and had a great old time. But it was very memorable for sure.
Yeah, most of their shows certainly were memory makers. Hey, Mike, I appreciate it. Have a good weekend, man.
Okay, you too.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The Duluth Arena where I saw it was it certainly isn't an NHL-sized rink. It was pretty small. It was probably smaller than Scotiabank Center is, and they brought the whole show. There was explosions and fire and laser beams and so on and so forth. I do remember my parents, who were not, I will say this, were not Kiss fans, but still took me anyway. Pretty cool, eh? They said that their ears were ringing for a couple of days after that one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
I just wanted to circle back on the code of conduct.
Sure.
And I was actually happy to hear Pam Mood call in, because there is something I want to expand on that. But after listening to Minister Lohr's response yesterday and digging out the paperwork, because I was like, I don't see an order in council for this. I can't find it in the Royal Gazette. How did they actually do this? And I found the filing that was submitted to the registrar on October 7th, but it looks like they actually passed everything on October 3rd. So there was still also a 4-day delay before it even hit the registrar. But I wanted to take like a 50,000-foot view on what we're actually looking at. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a university dropout who's had a lot of cool jobs and worked with lawyers like all over the world. And one thing I learned from the lawyers that I've worked with and worked for is that the one thing that is kryptonite to a corporation, which again, the HRM is a corporation and so is the government, is a paper trail. And when you're taking in code of conduct complaints, whether they want to call them vexatious or frivolous or whatever, you're seeing a pattern of conduct. And below the code complaints are likely, and not in every case, but you'll be able to find a pattern of potential statutory breaches. And that starts to become a massive liability for these corporations if there are people inside of these organizations that are repeatedly and routinely breaching statute. And so Pam was correct in her assertion when she said, just because the code of conduct isn't there as a mechanism for complaint, it doesn't actually stop people from having their voices logged. So while the province has suspended it to file a formal code of conduct, which had to go through the clerk, which is really important, the public still has the right to log and document and serve correspondence through the municipal clerk. That hasn't been changed. And the clerk's duty is to maintain and circulate records that ensures that the public notice, and this is where it's different. So once you serve it to the clerk, it's no longer just a complaint. It becomes a notice. You're now telling them, hey, there's something wrong. And there's a different legal distinction between a complaint and a notice. And you're now serving notice of dissatisfaction or concerns or breaches. And that now all starts to form part of the formal record, regardless of whether or not there's an internal complaint mechanism in place or not. And anything that is properly submitted to the clerk that falls within the scope of the municipality and the governance that they have does constitute constructive notice to the corporation and its officials. So then no one can say, we didn't know. We didn't know that was happening. Nobody told us, because the clerk is required to serve everyone. And so I'm still waiting on correspondence right now from Minister Lohr to confirm whether or not his department can receive or adjudicate allegations of statutory breaches under the HRM Charter or the MGA. They've remained silent on that, and whether or not they will accept the jurisdiction to address those breaches. They will not say anything. The best I've gotten from him, as I told you yesterday, was go hire a lawyer and just figure this out in the courts, which is completely unacceptable, and that to me seems like an abdication of his authority. But I think just because we can't say, hey, I can't submit a formal code of conduct complaint, we should not sit back and be quiet and not still log issues appropriately. And I think it's also a moment for the public to pause and remember, when you're sending these emails, this isn't like, treat it like you're filing a police report. You're not just going to go file a false police report because there's repercussions for this. So really sit back and think. This isn't the comment section on social media. You're filing a formal complaint. And if the code of conduct is not available to you anymore, now start educating yourself on the charter and the MGA, because those are your statutory mechanisms, and they're still there, and you can still file with the clerk.
Or stay tuned right here to the open hour, and Nicole will bring us up to speed on it.
Yeah, well, I've had to learn the hard way, right. And I learned through observation. Like I said, I worked with a lot of lawyers in many jurisdictions around the world, and you start to see patterns, and you start to understand that, everybody actually operates the same way, and maybe I can too, and maybe I don't actually have to have a law degree to do this, and if I speak like they speak, does this work? And it does, because these corporations recognize paper. They recognize authority on paper. And when you stand in your authority, you hold them in theirs. And then it's not really a power over power under dynamic. We start to equalize the pressure, and we can maybe start getting some things done. But just because Minister Lohr is acting dishonorably and out of integrity and showing the hand of the province and the municipality right now by trying to limit speech, it doesn't mean that it's still not available to us. And so I would encourage people to work whatever is in their best interest. I'm not a lawyer, I can't tell you what to do, but know that all your mechanisms aren't closed.
Nicole, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. An email on this says, can you imagine if they took the complaint process away from the public to complain about police, doctors, lawyers? Honestly, as a retail worker, may not always like my tone or actions, but they have the right to complain if it feels real to them. Leaders, managers and supervisors, and even coworkers have complaints and the right to complain. This is crazy. Their feelings got hurt, and now the public loses the right to submit a complaint. They already break their code of conduct on how they interact with the public on your show. She says Sean Cleary alone has been terribly disrespectful to the public, laughing at people and making fun of others. You can imagine if the right to put in the complaints against police were a thing. They accepted the role as leader, and that comes with risk of having people not agree all the time with you to get over it. That comes to us from Shelley. We're bound here on this program by rules, and there are mechanisms in place for people to complain about something that I or Todd or back in the day Rick or Jordy or Andrew or Tom or Sheldon or whoever sat in this chair said. And people do. And I'm glad that there is that mechanism there because it holds us to account. And yes, there are some frivolous complaints that come in, but there's a process built within that system to go through that and investigate it. Does it take time? Yup. Is it expensive? Likely. But I think it's necessary. And just because there may be people that are, as Mayor Mood said, ganging up and getting 20 people to file the complaint on the same thing, so what? That's the job of the independent investigator to weed through that and find out if these complaints have merit. We need a mechanism to hold our elected officials to account more than once every 4 years. We're going to stop, take a break for the news. The open hour continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. That's the immortal Ace Frehley, King of the Nighttime World. That was the second cut on the first album I ever owned. And if the guitar solo from Detroit Rock City didn't sell you, that one just did, didn't it? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Reminiscing, of course, on the passing of Ace Frehley yesterday. Reading some comments and quotes from Ace over the years, and many guitarists out there saying that he was a major influence on them, even picking up a guitar, never mind emulating what he did. And Ace was a bit of a comedian, smart aleck, I'll say. And he said and I think the quote was something along the lines that if he knew that he was going to be such an influence on so many musicians, he would have practiced more. We're going to miss Ace Frehley. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back to the phones. We welcome Dave to the show. Dave, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Dan. And thanks for taking my call. Just going to go over some of Carney's travels, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I was kind of shocked a little bit. And you can look, I think it was the AP or whatever. I got it from a good source. He's been to France, Paris, London. Now, these are on different dates, and some of them were around one trip. But again, you're hopping from one city,
right?
From Paris to London, whatever. So you got Paris, London, Washington, Italy, Rome, the Vatican, Belgium, the Netherlands, The Hague, Ukraine. That's the only returns I see. Well, I don't see any returns, but he gave a lot of money to Ukraine when he was there, billions, I think. Poland, Germany, and it goes on. U.S. a couple of times, Washington. So and Egypt, I must say Egypt was important. I don't disagree with that. I think it was a historic signing with the Gaza and the Israelis and the Hamas peace treaty, hopefully.
Right.
We shall see. But I think it was one of those moments that he had to be there. Just unfortunately, one of our planes was sick. And if he can rub shoulders a little bit more with Trump, maybe he will get the Air Force One or whatever's left over from their other planes that are being built. But that's a joke, by the way.
Right.
But also, I haven't seen any returns. Like, did you? I know a big story lately in Ontario, in Brampton, is Stellantis.
Right.
Have you heard of that company? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I have.
It's moving its operations, or some of it. It's saying it's moving some of it, but
Yeah, the Jeep Compass, I think, is what they're moving. The Jeep Compass is a brand, and they're moving it to the U.S.
It's outlining plans to invest $13 billion U.S.
Yep.
to expand operations into the U.S., create 5,000 new jobs. So you know where a lot of this is going. And in fact, it makes sense to me the way our government is being run right now by our prime minister. People are flooding out of here. And if indeed there is an opportunity to be,
but is that, and I don't mean to cut you off, Dave, but is that Mark Carney's fault, or is that just Donald Trump and his tariffs working?
Absolutely. I think it could be a bit of both, because if you don't move your company, he is encouraging companies to come down there because they don't want to pay the tariffs, right? And it makes sense. And he's looking out for number one, and that's his country. Now, Carney was hired basically elbows up, right? Mm-hmm. Trump got him hired, or he got him elected, I do believe, because it was very close and it was a double digit at one time. And to be honest with you, you could look at Carney, and you said it yourself. He's using the same playbook as Poilievre and the Conservatives, in a sense. And I don't mind that, because what he's doing is good, I hope. And I hope they go a little bit further when it comes to crime, because that's one of the issues, I think, Dan, that we worry about crime. We worry about the economy, of course. And we need to nip that in the bud. So I don't mind whether it's Carney, Liberals, Conservatives, or whatever. Get it done and do it right, because I think we're losing. We're the inmates are running the asylum in some ways, and I don't mind that. But he got in, elbows up, and can you see any results? Do we see any new companies to come? Very quietly, maybe companies are sliding into our country and billion-dollar deals. But
I don't think the elbows up was to get people to come into the country. I think the elbows up was to stop the Americans from coming into the country. Right?
Right, but he's had 6 months to encourage business here, and I was hoping when he was doing all this travel that he was rubbing shoulders with other countries, and I have not heard of anything. All I have heard is more companies are leaving, and we have a lot of workers in this country that are very nervous and on edge, and that does not make a very good economy. If you're worried where your next paycheck is coming from, and I do believe right now most of us are living, Dan, paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And some of us are within $200 of being bust, and that's not good. This country is not healthy right now, and it is his job. It is his job with his team to get things done, and he's been in there for 6 months, and he has gallivanted around the world as far as I can see. But let me know can somebody tell me what billion-dollar companies have come into this country and set up shop over the last 6 months. Because that's really what we need. And yes, it is his job to deal with the tariffs. Elbows up. He was going to be very tough. All I know is he's been to Washington twice, and quite frankly, I think he was battered around by Trump. I think he was a kicking bag in some ways. I know I could just see, it's a tough situation, but you got to be tough, right? You got to be tough. This is politics. And I just haven't seen any results. And I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but maybe yourself. I don't know. I haven't seen any companies opening up in this country that is helping us out as far as encouraging growth in this country. So that's my take on that.
Thanks,
and
Dave.
Like I said, I do. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000 1-877-801-8255. I don't think that Mark Carney's Elbows Up campaign was born on him saying we're going to bring a bunch of companies into Canada. Maybe I misunderstood him, but that's not the way that I figured that this whole Elbows Up thing was going. This was to solidify our economy, to build broader trade bases, and to stop the rhetoric of becoming a 51st state. Now, I know Trump mentioned it at the last visit he was in Washington. I get it, but it hasn't certainly been at the top of the agenda as it was under Prime Minister Trudeau, has it? Now, I've said on the air here, I think that we are into an elbows down approach. I wasn't happy with the way that Prime Minister came across with his second visit to Washington. I get it. There's a playbook for Trump now. You have to stroke his ego or you don't get what you want. And the Prime Minister did that, I think, to his detriment. And still came away with nothing. 902-405-6000 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Don to the program. Don, how are you?
Hello, Dan. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
All the way Blue Jays are going to come back and they're going to win. Same as the Leafs, right?
Bad example, Don. Bad example.
Todd, I hope you're listening because the Leafs are going to go hopefully this year.
Let's get the Jays the championship first, then we'll worry about the Leafs.
Okay, no problem. No, the only thing is I was downtown a couple times this week, and my God, the streets is dug up, and you got to circle around. It's got to be done.
Yep.
But you know what? I worked for a company there, and they had a lot of things open, like in the communications. There was so much. They had to go back to planning and all that. They had so many things open up in communications that was causing more problem than enough. But downtown. And like on Crumple Road and other streets there, I think there should be more of a planning done. Get one done first, and then open up another hole.
I totally agree.
We got a mayor, supposed to be a mayor of some sort, that did planning and all like that. Then we got a couple of counselors up there on planning, and they got to have this on the go right now. Come on, get with your game now. Come on. I mean, plan this out that people can get around and not like sit on Quimple Road for about half an hour to 40 minutes, really.
Yep.
Or else detour around. Next thing you know, oh my God, I got to get back in the lineup again.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I know I'm complaining about it a little bit, but it's got to be done. But plan a little bit.
Right.
Open it on up, get it. And the next thing about it, if they have a rain, the potholes where they dug up the street, I think the counselors are in city engineering. They got to get back there and make them a contract to fill in the Dodger potholes. They're about 2 feet deep, roughly, and they don't fill them up until they repave them. Do you ever come across them?
Oh, all the time. Absolutely, you're right. Yep.
I mean, there got to be some, constant, planning on doing that. And the other thing is too, I don't know too much about it. That they're taking it away from the people. The province took away the rights to the people to complain about municipal.
Yep.
I don't agree with that part at all. And I'm a big Tory. You know that, don't you?
Yes, sir.
I'm a big PC, that right? I'm not ashamed of it. Really, I am. I'm very proud of that. But the thing is, though, I don't know too much about it. But don't think they take the right away from the people on that side, because some of the councils, like Gloria said, do your job, will ya? Do it right.
Don, have a good weekend, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your help, Dan.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The Friday Free-For-All continues after the break. Welcome back. Friday Free-For-All continues here on the Todd Veinotte Show. The telephone number is 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Dan to the air. Dan, how are you?
Great, Dan. How are you doing?
Good. What's on your mind today, sir?
Well, I just wanted to be more of a public service announcement here, maybe a reminder for some, but, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I myself, I work for one of the top 5 banks. I've been doing so for 13 years. You see the news stories all the time about, people getting scammed, fraud happening on the accounts. I see it over and over again. I work in a department that typically handles these type of escalations as well. So I'm very versed, very experienced in the topic. And, I just want to bring awareness to your listeners, even those who are aware that scams are happening, because I still hear even knowledgeable, clients of the bank still being scammed. So, for example, I was just watching a short news clip there from, I think it was CTV News last night. And it was somebody who had fallen for a scam where they called. They were saying that they were their financial institution and basically gained their trust. Basically connected a call with the real bank, increased their email money transfer limits, and then proceeded to send $10,000. There was a news story done with the victim here, and a lot of the comments, including the victim's comments, were, the bank should have did more to protect me, and it was fraud. So I just wanted to first clarify, fraud is not when you fall victim of a scam. Fraud is when you basically check your bank account or your Visa statement and you realize, wait a second, there's a charge there. And I didn't do that charge. Possibly you've had dealings with the company, but you weren't expecting any new charges, for example. This is an example of what fraud is. That example is what the banks will protect you from and reimburse you after they complete their investigation and deem that it's not your responsibility and you're not liable. The problem with these scams is people are falling for the scam, and they are proactively themselves participating in the scam and sending money. It could be through e-transfer or whatever the means might be. And then they're looking to their bank to, protect them and reimburse them. Unfortunately, and I can only speak for my bank, and I won't, mention it for the purpose of the radio show,
sure.
But typically speaking, if you are the one that's participating, the bank doesn't protect you from that. And I do feel for these clients, and I have a team of, representatives that work with me on my team, and we deal with this all the time, and we hear this, and we really do feel for these clients. But it's just for more of awareness. If you receive a phone call, if you're suspicious at all, feel free to hang up. Even if the representative on the phone is saying that they're from your bank and it's an urgent matter, there's no problem with collecting the information with what they're telling you. Do not share any information. Do not provide them with any verification codes or click on any links. Let them know you're going to speak with your bank directly, and if this is a matter that has to be dealt with, you will follow up yourself. don't fall victim to the sense of urgency or any of these tactics that these people are using. And it's very unfortunate, but this is a growing concern. And like I said, I don't know who out there needs to hear this, but if you ever receive a phone call or a text message and you're unsure of its authenticity, please take your time, do your own research. You call your bank directly or visit your local branch and try to verify what this person was telling you is true.
Great advice, Dan. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. David, how are you today?
Not too bad. I was glad, so get me to think what I was going to do. Number one, sad day for all the Kiss fans.
Right.
Ace Foley.
Yes,
I was a big fan. Not that I collected any records. I listened on the radio when they had it.
Right.
And back in those days, it was called the Metro Center.
Yep.
They were supposed to get AC/DC in that year. They couldn't get them. So who filled them in? Rush.
Nice.
It was their Hold Your Fire tour.
Mm-hmm.
And backup, guess who else? Tom Cochran and Red Ryder.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I went to go see any concert, including Toronto, when they were hip, they were starting to come on. And back in those days, front row seats, $12.50.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in those days.
Yeah, in those days. Not anymore.
No. Oh, Jesus. But for Ace Foley, he will be missed.
He will. David, appreciate it, sir. Have a good weekend.
You too, Dan, and everybody at the station. Have a good weekend, everybody.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Ken to the show. Ken, how are you?
Good, Dan. Yourself?
I'm not too bad. What's on your mind?
Right on. No, I find it amusing that right now there's no recourse for anything that the councillor or the mayor does or anything like that. You can't. Who are you supposed to go to?
Well, that's just it, right? You got to go to complain to your councillor, and they can't. The legislation says that a councillor can't file a complaint for somebody else. So even if you go to your councillor to complain, they can't do anything.
Yeah. So I mean, somebody like Sam Austin, who's going ahead with his bike street over there, that the people do not want. Right. I don't care how much he says it. When you start having meetings without your councillor, is telling everybody that your councillor is not listening to you, for one, right? And chances are he's not going to be around. He'll probably just bow out early, I would say, next year and not go for re-election, because this will be his graveyard anyway. But I mean, Dan, maybe they should have a PER system like we used to have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And if your PER sucks, then guess what? You don't get your raise next year.
Yep.
Right? And you could have it as unique visitors. I mean, now that we have computers and it's fully automated, you can keep track of everything. Unique complaints. So if it's not like one person putting in 500 complaints,
yep,
right? Then you got somebody who's got it in for them or whatever. But if you had unique complaints from one councillor, then no, you're not getting a raise, right? And you'll be the first one to be considered for not being able to be reelected next time.
Right.
And as far as Kearney's concerned,
mm-hmm.
I think we should call him Goose Egg Kearney.
Why
because
is that?
That's all he's got is goose eggs. Every time he goes down to the States, it ended up costing us money. He's got nothing from anybody else. And if you had to go out and rent a jet and you have to check with the ethics commissioner,
right?
Maybe there is a reason to check with the ethics commissioner.
One would think, wouldn't they, Ken?
Exactly.
Have a good weekend, sir. Appreciate it.
You too. Thanks, Dan.
A PER is a military performance evaluation report, I think. This is going back 20-ish years, but I think a PER is a performance evaluation report that you get that judges you on your performance of your job when you're in the military, and it's used very heavily when it comes to promotion time. So that's what Ken was referring to. First-time caller, Jonathan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
You got the last word today. What's on your mind?
Oh, geez. Well, I just got a comment on the whole Carney traveling situation.
Right.
I don't understand why people are so upset, really. I mean, he's dealing with an unprecedented situation that our country's facing.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, he's going to have to travel. He's going to have to make deals. He's going to have to talk to people face to face. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's been less than a year. So I think people got to give him some time to make those deals and get something for the country.
I think what Canadians are concerned about, A, there's a segment of the population out there that no matter what Mark Carney does, they're not going to like it. But B
100%.
is that he's been giving us a peek at the budget that's coming in November, and it looks like there's going to be some austerity in there, some cuts, some job cuts, and it's tough for Canadians to swallow that you're going to. Our financial situation's in the state that it is, that we're going to have to cut jobs from people, yet, he's grabbing a private jet and traveling to Egypt.
No, for sure. And like the Egypt trip, I mean, it's debatable whether that was a reasonable cost or not. I'd like to know what the difference in cost is to taxpayers for using, the Canadian government jet compared to using a private jet. And I also think it like a caller said earlier, it was a good place for him to be. It's a historical event. And again, it's another chance for him to bump shoulders with leaders of the world and hopefully make some deals. Like, if he can make some deals, then maybe, the Australia be so bad, but it's going to, you got to give him a chance, basically.
Jonathan, appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
That's going to do it for the open hour, everybody. Appreciate each and every one of you that dial the numbers and join the conversation. You make my day each and every day that you do that. We're going to take a break for the news, but the show continues. Did you know that Canada now 7th in the world in the Global Agri-Food Rankings? We're going to dig into this report that was done by Dalhousie's Agri-Food Instant Analytics Lab, but it was also sponsored by MNP. Joanne McRae from MNP will be joining us to give us some perspective on it. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back after the news.
Halifax.
All right, welcome back to hour number 3 of the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Hope you're having a fantastic day. The sun's poking through the clouds. It's going to be a nice day. We're going to find out if the sun is going to stick around or if it's going to be stubborn, like he described it yesterday. When Allister Aalders joins us here on the program, that's going to happen this hour as well. We're going to talk with Cecil. I'm sure Cecil watched last night's game and is getting his Blue Jay gear on. Wouldn't that be something? As we go to Game 5 tonight at T-Mobile in Seattle, as the Jays seem to have all the momentum in the series now, winning 2 straight on visitors' turf, and look to take a stranglehold, as the saying goes, in the series tonight. But before we do that, Canada's agri-food sector is moving up the global ranks and fast. The latest edition of the Global Agri-Food Report, which gets compiled by our friends over there at Dalhousie University in the Agri-Food Analytics Lab, showing Canada advancing from 11th to 7th among the G20, the rise reflecting a stronger alignment across innovation, trade, and sector performance, and signals growing international recognition of Canada's leadership potential. Please welcome to the show to give us a little perspective on this, Food and Beverage Lead in Atlantic Canada with MNP. That's Joanne McRae. Joanne, how are you?
Great, thank you. How are you doing today, Dan?
I am doing just fine. I guess the first question is that MNP is involved in this report. Why is this kind of data important to what you guys do for a living?
So here at MNP, we're a national tax accounting and consulting firm, and we actually have the niche that I'm involved in specializes with food and beverage companies across Canada.
Right.
So these insights of this report really provides help for us to provide our clients advice and also just see how food and beverage companies in Canada as a whole are, on the international scale and where we compare.
And there's a wealth of knowledge in this report. It's really all encompassing. What were the areas that kind of, from your perspective in the food and beverage industry, kind of jumped off the page for you?
Probably the three that I would highlight out of the 6 pillars that are included in the report would be around retail and fiscal regime, food security and nutrition, and then the sustainability and environmental impact in our sector here in Canada.
Sure. The food security one was one that we've talked about here a lot on this program, and people that are food insecure. But that the numbers were still fairly high, are they not?
They are. It was actually quite surprising when we reviewed the report to see that 1 in 5 Canadians still face food insecurity here in Canada, which is really a high number given in the status of our country and the agricultural production that we have.
Food insecurity is not being able to afford a menu, correct?
Correct, and it really comes down to rising food prices across the country that we're seeing through inflation, income volatility, and ongoing supply chain disruptions that really compound that affordability issue, especially in northern and remote communities.
And the other interesting number that jumped off the second pillar for me was that less than 3% of Canadians are unable to afford a nutritious diet. I hear that all the time from people on the show that, nutritious food at the grocery store is so much more expensive than the unhealthy stuff.
Absolutely. And when we look at the information in the report, it really shows that income volatility is one of the biggest factors there. Looking at Canada as a whole, we actually have a trade surplus in food. So it shows that we're producing enough food. It's really how it's getting distributed across the country that creates that rising cost.
Another thing I hear about when we talk about food, and particularly with grocery stores, is the lack of competition in the market, and this study showing that number is increasing, that the 4 top retailers are controlling almost 2/3 of the market.
Yeah, which is really surprising, and that's actually up from our report that we did in 2024. So our 2024 report showed that it was 65%. That's now increased to 72%, showing further consolidation of retail. In our business, when we consider our clients that are small and mid-sized business that are producing food, that's really a concerning number because it makes it very difficult for them. If they can't get into those top 4 retailers,
right,
they don't have a business.
That's just it, right? And competition's good, and competition can help to lower prices.
Absolutely. And when you look where Canada falls in that ranking, we're actually very low. The report puts all of the countries into three tiers, and we fall in that 3rd tier with our retail and fiscal regime around food. And another piece that, kind of falls into there is that it's, difficult to get food across the geography in our country, right, which is part of what creates that supply chain pressure and increasing prices.
Almost 80% of all food loss happens before it gets to somebody's house. That's a huge number.
It is a huge number. And when we compare Canada to other countries, we also see that some of the countries that were top performers in that area have really adopted more of a digital adoption around supply chain efficiency to help reduce that number so that it's not 78% getting lost before it even makes it to table.
One of the things that raised a question for me is digital retail and the adoption here in Canada. What is digital retail when it comes to this?
So digital retail is really that direct-to-consumer strategy,
right,
which could help to alleviate both the cost pressure and the waste. When we look at some of the countries that really did well in this category, they have, a significant number of their direct-to-retail is done digitally. So South Korea is actually a strong case of that value of balance.
Food retail spending falling behind inflation. Is that a good news story?
Unfortunately not.
Right.
So what we're seeing is that what's happening is, from a food service recovery sector, in Canada, we still haven't got back to that pre-pandemic level. And it's really difficult, again, for those independent restaurants and grocers to keep up with the large chains when it comes to this area.
Joanne, if somebody wants to read more or dig into these numbers, where can they find them?
If they go to our website at www.mmp.ca, the Global Agri-Food report is right there on the landing page. There's an executive summary that gives a good overview of what's in there. But if you're looking for some more of the in-depth detail, you can download the full report there.
Joanne, appreciate it. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
That is Joanne McRae, Food and Beverage Lead in Atlantic Canada with MNP. P. When we come back, a new peek at the economy of Halifax from the Conference Board of Canada. What's happening in our economy, in our housing market? An economist with the Conference Board, Viktor Cicman, will be joining us. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Allister, and we're back in minutes.
Axe.
We're always looking for that bit of information to give us an idea on what's going on in our economy in Halifax, right? And the Conference Board of Canada has crunched the numbers and has looked at all of the indicators and has come up with what it is describing as its outlook for Halifax's economy for the remainder of this year and into next. And there is some interesting things in the key trends and factors that we'll start to explore a little bit with our next guest, who is an economist with the Conference Board of Canada. That's Viktor Cicman. Viktor, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I guess the first question is this data that is released, does it come from a variety of sources? Where do you get the info for it?
Oh, yeah. It comes from pretty much any data that Statistics Canada releases.
Right.
We gather it, put it together, put in our model, shoots out some numbers, we look at it, see what it says, and we sort of build a story from there.
The number one item on the list of things that I saw with regards to the Halifax area is the ongoing tariffs between the United States and, of course, those seafood tariffs with China, and that is having an impact here in Halifax and the Maritimes.
Yes, it is. So obviously, tariffs are slowing down the economy across Canada. All provinces are feeling it, and Nova Scotia is not immune to that. I will say Halifax specifically, but Nova Scotia in general. The province and the city is doing a bit better, actually, than some of the surrounding provinces and what we see elsewhere in Canada. Some of the auto parts, manufacturing, and any of those a lot of it's still covered under the CUSMA free trade agreement. So the manufacturing sector looking a bit better than what other areas are sort of seeing in other provinces, but the agriculture as well. I think last year Nova Scotia exported about 26% of its seafood to China alone. So it's going to be hit there a little bit. But again, compared to some other provinces, Nova Scotia has done, and Halifax specifically has done quite well, and sort of maintained some growth and doing a bit better this year than what we may have expected.
Speaking of growth, population grew between 2022 and 2024 by just under 3%, but the federal government's targets for non-permanent residents, the reduction in that is resulting in more modest gains this time around.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's probably one of the bigger stories in the outlook. I think for this year, it will impact it, but it's more so even over the next couple of years. So Nova Scotia and Halifax has seen quite robust population growth. We saw people coming from other provinces. We've seen a lot of immigrants. There's been a lot of non-permanent residents, so that's a lot of students. Yeah, a lot of even temporary workers. Now that the federal government released new numbers, they're slashing those down to, they want to be around 5% by 2027. So that means we actually have to enter negative territory for non-permanent residents this year and even next. And then even the permanent residents is cut down. So that's, a lot of businesses are worried about being able to attract some of these workers. Educational institutions are worried about students coming in. And so that's going to be a huge drag on just, people coming in, spending, working. And you'll definitely, in our outlook, for it goes out till about 2029, you're going to see that a lot more acute as retirements pick up. Baby boomers are leaving the labor force. The unemployment rate, it gets a lot actually tighter in the province and in Halifax because people are coming in, people are retiring, businesses can't find exactly who they need. So there potentially could be even those labor shortages occur later on in the outlook.
So by those negative numbers in those non-permanent residents, that would be, and forgive me, I'm not a math guy, but that would to me means that we're going to see in the next year less people, particularly in the foreign workers program in the province.
Yeah, I think this year and next year as well, unless, there's a new budget coming.
Right.
Numbers change, but we go by what was released in the last budget. So they want to keep a lid on non-permanent residents. So it's actually this year, next year, we see almost no growth or negative numbers, actually, even in 2026 for the non-permanent residents. And then, a slight pickup is what we see. So, yeah, it's quite a shift in what we've seen. The population has definitely helped give a little boost to Halifax and the surrounding area. It's really helped propel growth, but at the same time, it was, impacting a lot of other areas, including services and housing affordability. So, there's wins and losses in a lot of things that happen. It's quite a dynamic, economy.
We've been watching the housing market across the rest of the country here in Nova Scotia, particularly here in Halifax, and watching housing prices drop. We're seeing condo prices in Ontario falling through the roof. But we have been relatively insulated here from that. But according to this new data, it looks like the housing market's starting to get a little bit softer here, and sales are down about 2.1% in August from a year earlier. Yeah.
So, and that 2.1% is actually pretty good relative to some of the other markets. As you mentioned, in Ontario, it's almost cratered some of the residential and then even condo market sales. So the one thing that, Halifax has benefited from is that in some ways there's been an underinvestment in housing for many years. And so there's always been kind of a tight market there. A lot of people are trying to get in and they couldn't. And so now housing starts did pick up, but it was still below even what we saw, what we needed during those post-COVID years when there was that population boom. And so there's still that sort of backdrop. Interest rates are still a little high, makes affordability a bit challenging for some people. So some people are still on the sidelines, but there's enough that, when a house goes for sale or condo goes for sale, there's still some people out there looking to buy as the rates potentially move even lower, as the prices sort of stall or go down a bit. You might still see more people coming in. So, it looks like it's softening, definitely. We see that across the country, but Halifax has held up remarkably well compared to other areas.
Viktor, you also looked at job prospects. What's it looking like for the rest of this year and into next?
Yeah, so, to start the year, the job market actually wasn't doing too bad. As I said, so far, the province and the city has done quite well. There was job growth. However, as these tariffs sort of drag on and kick in, there's a lot of uncertainty whether this was just going to be a couple months. Our outlook, the U.S. tariffs are in for 2 years. The Chinese tariffs stay in for a while. There's just slowdown right across anywhere from wherever we export to Europe or America. So a lot of employers have either held on to their employees. They don't just want to let them go right away. So it's kind of kept a lid on the unemployment. However, we did notice in the summer that it kind of picked up and the unemployment rate went up a little bit. Job losses increased. Now, the newest labor force survey release showed that it's actually, going up a little bit. Was this the worst that we've seen? Is the worst over? It's not, exactly clear. We think, though, overall this year is just going to be very tepid growth in employment. We have it only growing by 0.5%, compared to what we saw growing 5.4% last year. We had very good growth in employment. It was much, hotter economy. And so now it's almost stalled, the job market. This will continue into 2026 and then a slight boost going forward. But again, as I mentioned before, that's where the demographics sort of factor in. And that's where, foreign immigrants aren't coming in, retirements are increasing. Well, unemployment rate will sort of stay quite low, and employment, will eventually also not increase as much as it could.
Victor, appreciate your time, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That is Viktor Cicman. He is an economist with the Conference Board of Canada. You can check the numbers out for yourself on the Conference Board of Canada website. We're getting ready to take another break here. Mark's going to join us to update us on what's going on in the news. And then on the other side of the news, we'll do our weekly sit-down with our weather specialist, Allister Aalders. He'll be joining us to give us the very latest, and I can see him, he's going through those charts right now, the very latest on what we can expect through today and Saturday and into Sunday and maybe even the beginning of the work week. That's still to come. A couple of emails I'd like to pass along from our discussion earlier today about complaints and counselors. Rob writes, I'd like to hear what HRM counselors have to say about how the province is shielding them from complaints, what they're doing to open up the democratic process to the public. Will they publicly be requesting that the province reverse this decision? That's, of course, now out there. And don't forget, we will have municipal politicians sitting right here in the studio on Monday morning for Councillors on the Hot Seat. And we'll ask them that question because I think it's fair. And I think that the people will have a right to know. This one from Dave. I agree with your comments, Dan, and the concerns callers have on this issue and disagree with Pam Mood. When we limit the public's ability to complain about our city councillors and their decisions, it needs to be balanced with limits on their conduct, including spending. If they limit our ability to complain and they have no spending limits, we'll continue to have billion-dollar deficits and $100 million bike lanes with no accountability. Dave writes, keep up the conversation on the issue, freedom of speech, and our ability to complain, especially when we see things we do not agree with, is important. And I agree. Let's stop and get a break for the news. When we come back, do you need your umbrella this weekend? Weather specialist Allister Aalders will be your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Free.
All right, welcome back. That, of course, is the big intro to our next guest who joins us every Friday at this time. And that is, of course, Allister Aalders. Allister, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And I know, and I don't know if you heard it earlier, if you were listening, I was at the grocery store yesterday. And,
yes, I did hear this.
And we were going through. There was and I'm not going to say she was an elderly lady, but she was older than me, and she was pushing her cart. And you know how the Sobeys have the automatic doors, and the door opened, and she looked down, and she goes, "Oh, I haven't seen that for a long time." And I'm looking around, what is she looking at? And then it was the rain.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people are just remarking like, "Oh, there's puddles on the ground for once," and not with this more recent rain, but I think it was like the middle of last week we had a brief shower, and just being at home and hearing the rain outside, it's like, what is that? What's that noise? Right. Like it does. I'm like, haven't heard that for a long time. So right. It's definitely been nice to see. As we've talked about, not near a lot, not near enough. We need a lot more.
Right.
But this is the first time in as long as I can remember, in weeks, that the blocking pattern finally shifted to our north and our east, and we were in the block of low pressure for once. It obviously didn't benefit us to the extent that we would have hoped for, but we haven't been in this kind of pattern for a while, and I think we're starting to see the pattern overall changing. It's I'm not saying that we're seeing these long lasting it rains all day, rains all night events yet, but it's becoming more active in the jet stream, where we had the showers yesterday. We're still in this trough where it's not really, I would say, active today. It's just a bit unsettled depending on where you are. Driving in today, there was a brief shower here or there. But really, I'm looking towards next week and the middle and later stages of next week. It looks like we'll see multiple systems coming through. So that's a good sign, because obviously it is still very dry. The drought monitor for the end of September was released last weekend, and the valley and parts of northern Nova Scotia in an exceptional drought, which is the highest on the Agri-Food Canada scale. So the drought situation is still very much ongoing, despite some rain recently, but we need a lot more. We need, normal and then some for multiple months really to make up for it. So hoping that we start to really see this pattern solidify before obviously the ground freezes for the winter.
Right. And I know, and you may not have the numbers, and if you don't, that's cool, but do you know any idea how much rain we did get yesterday?
It really varied depending on where you were, just because the showers for some were more widespread, and then here in the Halifax area, it would rain, stop at times. So it varied considerably. It was a general 2 to 10 millimeters, but there were certainly pockets that had 10 to upwards, and in some cases in excess of 20 millimeters, but that was more localized. But certainly it was parts of the valley and parts of northern Nova Scotia where it has been a lot drier that did receive some of those higher totals. And I mean, I know it's certainly been dry for the South Shore and the Halifax area. The drought not analyzed as being as severe or exceptional, which I know some would probably disagree with based on what I had posted on social media over the weekend. But we have had more rain, even if it doesn't seem like it compared to the valley and parts of the North Shore. So the amounts were just, it wasn't a uniform rainfall once again, like any of the events we've had recently. So hoping that we see those more widespread and higher amount rainfalls, which come with issues too, but certainly would like more than just 10 millimeters from these events.
All right, I asked the question before the break, do we need an umbrella this weekend? And the answer from Allister Aalders is...
Probably not, but depending on where
There's a meteorological answer.
Probably
Maybe
not. Okay, in the Halifax area, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But if you're traveling, because obviously we don't, our listener base is not just limited to Halifax.
Right.
It might be in the valley or up in Dartmouth, Truro.
Right.
We have people listening in Cape Breton, of course. So the farther north and east you are this weekend, the better chance you might encounter an isolated shower. And the chances are that isolated. Here in the Halifax area, somewhat to today, tomorrow, where, there's breaks in the clouds, but there's quite a bit of cloud cover with a chance of some patchy drizzle, maybe an isolated shower, but it's nothing to cancel your plans over. And then Sunday is looking dry for the entire province. I think more clouds in the mix, especially the farther west you are. The cloud going to be a bit stubborn just because we're getting into a ridge in the jet stream behind this blocking pattern, but it's not really strong enough to clear the skies completely. So I would say if you're farther north and east this weekend, have that umbrella handy, although the showers are definitely going to be more isolated than widespread, certainly compared to, say, yesterday.
How about the wind?
The wind's there on the gusty side out there today,
I'll
from the north and the northeast, gusting upwards of 40, 50, for some 60 kilometers per hour. So they start to gradually diminish a bit tonight, 20 to 40, but they're going to remain quite persistent in that range from the north on Saturday, upwards of 40, maybe 50 kilometers per hour. But finally, as this blocking setup where we've had, that low pressure system stalled well offshore, driving in that northerly flow, it's going to move out and we start to see the winds light. So right now it's looking like the winds will be quite light for Sunday. Maybe a bit of a breeze first thing in the morning, but I think as the day goes on, the winds do become quite light. So there's really not a lot of wind during the later stages of the weekend, but certainly the start of it, you will be noticing it a bit breezy for some, at times gusty.
So it might be a lovely weekend to get out and check some of those fall colors out.
100%. I mean, the drive-in today.
Wow. It's like we were worried about it. You and I were talking about this earlier, that in August when with this drought and these dry conditions, the trees were already starting, and we thought, oh wow, we're not going to get any colors. That's anything but the fact.
For sure. I mean, certainly trees did start changing earlier than normal, but in terms of the dullness, for the most part, I don't think it's been too bad. Some trees peaked a little early and maybe weren't as vibrant, but, driving in today, the colors are really vibrant. So it really just depends on where you are. The thing about trees is that, they put up with a lot of stress, but they're quite resilient. So despite, the lack of rainfall, the sunshine that we had through September and October with warm days but cool nights, did help, because obviously that's kind of the key recipe before the colors peak, is you want bright sunny days and cool nights, and that's what we did get. So that helped in a way to kind of offset the drought. But, like I was mentioning on the drive-in, the colors were really popping. And this is kind of the best weather, at least in my opinion, for viewing them, because the sunshine can make them appear a little washed out.
Yeah.
When you have gray weather or a bit of a cloudier backdrop, they really stand out.
There's a fine line, though, because if it gets like yesterday, when it was like we had those threatening skies and it was really dark, then the colors just didn't pop as much. But like today, when you're looking at those bright white clouds and just a little bit of sunshine filtering through, it's a photographer's dream.
It really is. I was like, I need my camera here right now. It was, this is the perfect, at least in my opinion, the perfect weather for fall color viewing. And obviously this is the time to see them, because, we're right at peak. Some trees are now past their peak, but, certainly if you're, say, heading to the Cape Breton Highlands this weekend, I would say
Cabot Trail will be
this
awesome.
is the perfect weekend for it, just because there will be some wind blowing the leaves off, but there will still be a lot of color, I think, to be seen, and against the backdrop of a bit of a duller sky, it really makes them stand out. It's really enjoyable.
How about back to work Monday? What are we looking at for the beginning of the week weather-wise?
So Monday is a bit of a fair day. It's a mix of sun and cloud, although I would say the models are not. They're not agreeing on if it's more sun or more cloud at this point, just because, as I mentioned, that ridge of high pressure is not going to completely bring us back to wall-to-wall sunshine. But I would say that's probably the pick of the week in terms of sunshine, because we then enter an unsettled pattern. We have another system moving in. Could arrive in the southwest of the province as we go through Monday night into early Tuesday, but I think for much of us it moves in throughout the day on Tuesday. A quick line of showers. And then it does look like we'll have another system, around Wednesday to Thursday, and maybe even again at the end of the week. So it's certainly looking like overall next week, a bit of an unsettled pattern. Temperatures, our average high is now about 13 degrees during the daytime, and we will be a bit above that, 15, 16, maybe even 17 degrees.
Wow.
So we're getting into a bit of a warmer flow with these systems moving through. No real threat of frost at this point in time. So that's good news if you have any late season flowers or vegetables you're still tending to. But overall, it does look like, the start of the week is fine, but much of next week looking unsettled, with opportunities for showers and rain in the forecast, which we will certainly take.
Much?
Well, it's still a little bit,
It's early, Dan. Don't put me on the spot like that.
It is still early. What I've found, throughout the last several weeks is that when these systems move through, the model guidance is very much overdoing the amounts in the longer range, where it thinks, this is going to really hold up. And then it's moved into these blocking highs, or they're not as strong as the models first appear, and we end up getting much less. So I'm cautious about how much is to come next week. I would say with the line on Tuesday, the amounts are not looking to be significant, just because of the showery nature of it and the fact it will be moving through fairly quickly. But I would say the mid and later week systems have the potential to be more defined, more developed systems that are slower moving. So I would say that's when we'd have the potential for higher amounts later next week.
Running shoes or rubber boots?
Maybe a mix of both, depending on the day. Rubber boots overall, I'd say later in the week, but I mean, on say Tuesday, it might be rubber boots to work and then running shoes on the way home.
Oh, there you go. So keep them in the trunk.
Just have them handy, right? It's that time of year. But I'd say, maybe get the rubber boots handy, hoping that the forecast does not change. But I would say, there's pretty good agreement that we will start to see this more unsettled pattern move develop, which we've been so waiting for. And I know we don't want to get into then a pattern where it's just raining all the time, but we really do need the rain, and we need a lot of it. So bring it on, I say. Let's, I don't want anything too significant, but bring on the rain. We definitely need it.
Next week, Allister.
Sounds good.
That is Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. He's here every Friday. Time to take our last break on the show. When we come back, let's talk sports with Cecil. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Just a few minutes left in the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Oh boy, there are some Blue Jay fans that are feeling pretty good about themselves right now and their chances in their team. Some Seattle Mariner fans that maybe not as cocky as they were a couple of days ago. And these short series, and by short I'm talking about days. Baseball does it right, I think. Even if it is a 2-3-2, which is 2 games at home, 2 games or 3 games away, 2 games at home, but they play them very quickly so that these series don't drag on and on and on. Like those hockey series do, right, Cecil?
I agree with you 1,000%. I have always felt that way too. Baseball does it right. That's why I'm glad they play 162 in the course of the summer, because that gives them very few days off. They're used to it. Let's get her going.
Right, and it keeps the momentum for whomever the team is, right?
Well, you would think so, but I don't. Right now, I don't think the Seattle Mariners would agree with that.
No, I don't think so either. Obviously, Cecil, you've been watching the series.
Oh, yeah. Haven't missed a pitch.
What?
And I got to tell you something. I was so impressed with the Toronto bullpen last night.
Right.
Those guys came in there through BBs. I think they, 2 hits they gave up. That was it. Unbelievable job. And that sets them up pretty well now for the rest of the series.
It does, and it was the biggest question mark that everybody had heading into the playoffs was the Jays bullpen, and we saw them close out the Yankees with a bullpen day, and then yesterday held the Mariners to just 2 hits or whatever it was. The bullpen has certainly stepped up.
They certainly have. I just hope that the starting pitching,
right.
Talking about Mr. Gosman, doesn't think that, he doesn't have to throw his best game of the year, because I really believe he's going to have to, because Seattle, I know they've lost the past 2 games, but you can't overlook the bats that they've got.
Absolutely. And it's nice to see, being that, I'm a graybeard over here, to see Max Scherzer pitch well on the mound last night.
And I thought after the first inning, maybe he can last through 3 innings. What a job he did. You want to talk about a gritty veteran performance. That's the epitome right there.
I thought he was going to take the manager's head off when he came to yank him out of the game.
Well, that's the way he is. The guy, he's a grouch, but he's also a grouch that has proven to be a success, particularly in postseason play.
Now, the Jays' fortunes through this series have rested on the bat of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It seems when he's hitting and he's getting on base, the Jays win. When he isn't, he isn't.
Which is why, if I was Seattle, I wouldn't even be pitching to him.
Right.
Without Bo Bichette in the lineup to back him up, I've got to tell you, I'm pretty impressed with some of the young guys like Clement.
Right.
Yep. Those guys, I couldn't even have told you who he was before this year.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would still take my chances on walking Vladdy and pitching to the rest of the guys.
I think that the home run ball is obvious, and it has been, Cecil, for years for the Blue Jays, has been the savior, right?
Oh, yeah. No question about it. But that's another reason why I'd be walking Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I would not be pitching to him. You know that he's the one guy that's capable of hitting the ball out of the ballpark with any swing. Take your chances on somebody else. Who's the next guy? Do you really care? It's not Vladdy.
Right, and he's not going to hurt you, at least at that second. Cease, if they win tonight, if the Jays win tonight, is this series over? Or vice versa, if they lose tonight, then they can't feel confident going back to Rogers Center after those 2 losses?
I see this going 7.
Yeah,
I really do, and I've been impressed with some of the Seattle pitchers. At Kirby,
right?
For the first few innings, man, he was almost unhittable. And then guys slow down. The second or third time through the lineup, the bats catch up with them a little bit, and that's what we've seen. So, but I would not overlook Seattle at all, man. They've got that Polanco guy. What?
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Yeah, no, I think these 2 teams are pretty evenly matched. Their records may not have seen it through the regular season, but based on postseason play that I've watched so far, I think, it's 1 and 1A. I think they're both pretty solid teams matched together.
And that's why I think this is going 7 games, and I can't wait. I just love a Game 7. Doesn't matter what the sport is. Give me a Game 7 any day of the week. I'll cancel all my appointments.
Cecil, if I'd have told you 3 weeks ago that I could come onto the Todd Veinotte show on our Friday segment and say, how about those first place in the AFC East New England Patriots, I might have choked on my coffee, but holy smokes, they're turning into a good team again.
You know what? As good as the Patriots are playing, you know what I can't believe in the AFC? The Indianapolis Colts are 5-1 with Daniel Jones as their quarterback, who the Giants gave the boot to.
Yep.
Now, you tell me you would have predicted that, and I'll say you are a liar.
Absolutely. Nobody did. And winning big, too.
Winning big, that's right. You know, they've got a great running back in Jonathan Taylor. I've always liked him. But back to my Patriots. Let me brag for a minute. The thing that is really mystifying about the team is they've been doing it with virtually no running game at all.
Yeah, they don't even try. They don't even try.
Drake May has just been on target with his passes. Kayshon Boutte has come alive at wide receiver to go along with Stephon Diggs. You know, if everybody stays healthy, and that's a big if in the National Football League,
right.
You know, with the easy schedule that the Patriots have, you know, I got my fingers crossed that they maybe do make the playoffs.
Did you watch the Geriatric Bowl last night?
I did. I watched some of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I got to tell you, your boy Aaron Rodgers got to be pretty pissed off.
Oh, no kidding, right? Holy smokes. And Joe Flacco, who the Browns tossed aside, traded him in their conference and division to I think the average, what was the median age between those two, it was 83 or something last night. It was crazy.
Something like that. I'll tell you what, though, you got to give Cincinnati credit, because everybody said their season was over when Joe Burrow went down, and you know, they've had some injuries too, like every team does, but my goodness gracious, you got to give them credit. Beating Pittsburgh, that's an accomplishment for the Cincinnati Bengals.
And your surprise of the AFC was the Colts, mine's the Ravens. That the Ravens are 1-5 and look awful.
They look terrible. And they got to go on a 7-game win streak to get themselves possibly in position to make the playoffs. And even if they do, there's no guarantee. They're in deep, deep trouble.
Cecil, enjoy the game tonight. Have a fantastic weekend, sir.
All right, stay out of the rain.
That is Cecil Wright, our sports guru. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you to all of you who joined the show to impart your knowledge on us. I truly appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who picked up the phone, dialed the numbers, and joined the conversation. You make my day each and every day that you do it. Thank you very much to Vanessa Vandenez behind the glass. Does absolutely wonderful work trying to keep me in line, even though I'm probably got us in trouble for playing those Ace Frehley clips today. But we'll deal with it. We'll live with it. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Go, Jays, go. We'll see you on Monday. Until then, be well and be kind to one another.